Hello and welcome back to another episode of Rewiring Health. My name is Kelly, and today we are talking about something that is all over the place. You see it everywhere. I'm sure you've heard this word plenty of times, and people telling you how you should do this, how you should implement it. And I've even talked about it myself plenty of times, and that is self-care. And what I thought was important to bring to you today is what is self-care? What truly is self-care? Now, it may seem like a very self-explanatory thing, but what I have seen advertised as self-care really is self-avoidance. And that is a major problem. And so, how many times have you had a really tough day at work, or maybe a rough week or month, and you see the advertisement for 50% off a spa day, and you're like, yep, sign me up. I earned this. I have had a really rough time. And how many times have you scrolled on Amazon and like, I'm just going to get myself that. I had a rough day at work. I am going to treat myself to that. And that gets plastered all over the place as self-care. Take a day at the spa, go get your nails done, take some time out for yourself, take a day off. And while I am an advocate of all those things, it is good to take care of yourself, and it is good to take time for yourself. And by no means do I want you to ever feel guilty for doing any of these things. That is not the message I want to give you today. It is important to differentiate if you are actually doing healing or just kind of escaping what you're feeling in that moment. And so first, I just want to share the difference between self-care and self-avoidance, because this is something that I was not even aware of for a long time. And I was that person that would avoid. I use exercise as my coping mechanism to avoid how I was truly feeling. I would be feeling a certain way, not be able to identify, but just know it didn't feel good. And I would literally just go run for 14 miles. And I would feel good in the short term, but really I was just kicking the can down the road and creating a bigger issue for myself. I had no idea I was doing this. And that's why I wanted to share this conversation with you, because bringing awareness to this, if I had that awareness years ago, it would have saved me from a lot of the turmoil that I experienced by doing that. I thought I was caring for myself. I was not. I was avoiding how I was feeling and what was really going on at the root of the issue. Are you the person who says yes, even though you want to say no? Are you the person who puts your own needs and wants last behind the demands of your work and everyone else in your life? If you answered yes to any of these, you may be self-abandoning, and it does not come without a cost. If you want to know if you're self-abandoning for achievement, take my free quiz in the show notes. So first of all, let's talk about what is self-avoidance. So self-avoidance is suppressing, ignoring, or avoiding something that feels difficult or is perceived as difficult. This could be an emotion that you're experiencing. It could be a task that you really don't want to do and you keep putting off. It could be a difficult conversation. Whatever it is, it feels like there's some sense of resistance in doing it. You're dreading it. You don't want to do it. You don't want to address it. You would rather just walk away and act like it's not there. And this is something that we've all experienced. We've all had those emotions, those moments, those things that we just wish would kind of just disappear. But have they ever actually disappeared when you turn a blind eye to them? No. And that is the big thing, is that they just amplify. So when we avoid situations, we escape from them, they actually become bigger. And when we avoid, rather than actually address the healing of it, the sheer thing that we are actually removing ourselves from grows. Have you ever had that thing? Maybe it was taking care of a bill, and you're like, oh, I gotta do that, but I don't really want to. I'm gonna just act like it's not there. And then it's always in the back of your head, and then the dread around it just gets bigger and bigger, and you know it's still there, but you have to address it, and you really don't want to. And by the time you get there, there's so much resistance, and you muster up everything you have to actually address it or deal with something that was going on. And then you do it and you're like, oh my gosh, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Okay, it's over. I'm glad. I don't know why I put myself through that. That's how it happens, is that we have these things that are really truly become resistant in life. And if we turn a blind eye or we ignore them or suppress them, they only grow. And when we do activities that are self-avoidant, They are a lot of times the short-term gain for a long-term consequence. So when I'm talking about like a spa day, like I said, a spa day by itself is not bad. But if you were doing it to avoid something, so say you had something that was pressing and you knew you had to take care of it, you knew you had to deal with it, but you maybe were using days at the spa or just getting away, or like I was doing, running to avoid it, the problem only grew. So in the short term, yeah, while you're running or while you're at the spa, you feel good, but then you get back and it's right there again, that dreadful feeling. And so that is important to address, because a lot of times things like taking a day at the spa or taking a day off are portrayed as self-care. And I want to show you that there's a deeper level of self-care. And what self-care really is actually allowing yourself to heal. And so, again, I want to make it abundantly clear, I am not against spa days or days off. I am a huge advocate of that, but we don't want to confuse that with actually healing and caring for ourselves. So what self-care is honoring your mental, emotional, and physical and spiritual health. It's that feeling that you feel lighter, that your behaviors, your actions, and your words are aligned with things that are meaningful to you, and your values. When you are doing self-care afterwards, you feel lighter, you feel energized, you feel more connected to yourself and more at peace. There's almost like that letdown of like, ah, the pressure is off. And that is where that sense of self-care comes in. And when it is truly self-care, it is recognizing that in actions that you're taking, you are respecting yourself in a way that you are moving yourself forward, elevating yourself, and allowing yourself to become a better version of yourself. And so self-care may be these pleasurable things that you can do and really take a moment for yourself. So it may be just taking a moment to meditate. It may be doing a cold shower in the morning. It may be journaling. It may be just sitting and allowing yourself to feel your emotions. So it can be these very obvious things that are more pleasurable. But I also want to share with you that sometimes self-care hides itself. And these aspects of self-care are truly the most important aspects of self-care. And this is something that is not typically highlighted when we talk about self-care, of how do we show our self-love? How do we recognize that we have worth? How do we elevate our sense of worth? And that was a huge wake-up call for me, because what I realized is that my life, my external environment will lower itself to my level of self-worth. So if I have a low self-worth, everything will just lower down to that. So it's so important to take the actions and do the behaviors that elevate your self-worth, because your whole life changes once you start doing that. And when I'm talking about some of those maybe harder and more difficult things to do that are truly self-care and are really the bigger bang for your buck, are those moments that you show up for yourself when maybe you don't want to and there is a resistance. So it may be setting the alarm to get up out of bed and go for that morning walk or do yoga. Maybe it's the times that you advocate for yourself, that you speak up for yourself when it feels so uncomfortable, but you feel like you had to say something because you know you're worth it. Self-care is when you put in the extra work because your goal is so big and you know you are destined for greatness and you're willing to do what it takes. That is self-care, because you are doing it for yourself, for your betterment of yourself. What self-care are the times that you say no, the times that you say no to people and you say yes to yourself. You say no to things that are draining you in your life, and you allow yourself and you give yourself permission to feel elevated and to preserve and increase your energy without letting it being taken by other people. That is truly self-care, recognizing your worth. Self-care is when you seek out support from others, when you are maybe independent, but you recognize that, in this moment, I need help. And that's okay. That is truly self-care, when you recognize that maybe some things are greater than what you can handle at this moment, and that you are so worth it that you will seek out the assistance to get through this tough moment in your life. Self-care looks like when you stand for what you are you recognize, excuse me, you recognize what you're willing to stand for and what you're no longer willing to accept in your life. And this is such a big one when you start to set some of those boundaries of like, I can no longer accept being treated like this, or I am willing to accept these greater things in my life. That is recognizing yourself, elevating your worth, and truly caring for yourself because you're no longer accepting things that lower you or keep you held or stuck. And that is self-care. Self-care goes far beyond the things that are often discussed as self-care, which are the spa days, which are the walk and getting some sunshine. While those are amazing, and I am a huge advocate of doing those things, we have to recognize that self-care is not always butterflies and sunshine and happiness and pleasurable. Self-care sometimes looks like it is challenging. Sometimes it is challenging to speak up for yourself. Sometimes it is challenging to say no to somebody. Sometimes it is challenging to set boundaries that need to be set. But those are the deepest levels of self-care and recognizing that you are worthy of doing those things. And that is what I wanted to share with you today, is that there can be a huge misconception about self-care. And that, first of all, it's not about running away from the things that you need to address. It is actually standing up and facing some of your fears and going after it. So I want you to recognize, are you truly caring for yourself, or are you avoiding yourself? Are you escaping some of the things that you don't really want to face that feel uncomfortable? Or are you taking them head on and recognizing that I am worthy of doing this and showing up for myself day in and day out? I am worthy of having elevated energy. I am worthy of more. That truly is self-care when you are doing it based out of knowing what you're worth, rather than avoiding things that feel uncomfortable. So I wanted to share that because this was such a huge eye-opener for me in my life. And then I recognized for years I had literally run from so many things and just avoided that, thinking I was caring for myself in that moment, and I truly wasn't. So when you take a moment to show up for yourself, when you recognize that you are making decisions that are aligned with your values, aligned with something meaningful, aligned with something that is bigger and greater than you are even in this moment, that you recognize that you are destined for something bigger in this life, and that you are willing to make those tough decisions, and you are willing to show up for yourself, and you're willing to say yes to yourself, that is self-care. And every time you do that, every time you say yes to yourself, every time you wake up early to do those things and work towards your goals, that is elevating your worth, and that is elevating your life. And they all work in relationship with each other, in relationship with each other. And that is where you want to be. You want to elevate your worth, recognize that you are worthy of more, and that self-care truly is elevating yourself and recognizing that you are destined for something great. I hope that helps today, and I hope it helps you recognize what is actually self-care in your life, and maybe what is some of that avoidance that you may be doing.